Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another exciting workshop. We have today Alain, who's our speaker, and he's a Google developer expert. And this is a particularly very interesting workshop that is something very novel, and I think you all could benefit a lot from this newly uh, very new idea that without even knowing anything about AI, you could build a chatbot. And Elaine today is going to teach us how we could do that in only a couple of hours. We will be utilizing Google's MakerSuite API and very, very minimal code. So I'm really excited for this workshop and thank you so much for coming. And this is, hope you all are having a good time hacking and hope you enjoy this workshop. Over to you, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome everyone. I'm going to talk about building a chatbot with Palm API and Angular. And I can touch on all of the different technologies I used during this process. So I can show you basically everything from start to finish, so you get a good idea, at what it takes really to build a chatbot these days. And the subtitle I added here is how to build an AI without knowing anything about AI, which is pretty much the case. You can really get started and you don't have to be, a data scientist or someone super advanced in Python or knowing about all of these complex equations that make up artificial intelligence. You can really start from the basics, generate something, and then use it right away in your own application and, create an application around that if you want to. So before I get into that, just a quick introduction. My name is Alan, or just Al. I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies, more specifically Angular and Google Maps. I started with Angular a long time ago, back in 2011. And my job today is mostly to teach and train people, do consulting using web technologies like Angular, React, JavaScript, TypeScript, Cypress for end-to-end testing, and all of these things. And my main website is angulartraining.com. So that's me. That's what I do. And yeah, the picture here is me speaking at a conference. It's something I do a few times per year at least. And it's one of the different activities that I engage in order to share everything I know about Angular and the web. So AI, everybody hears about AI these days, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way, with ChatGPT and all of these new things that emerged and really became almost mainstream over the past few months. Everybody's been talking about AI. And AI is something I always had interest in. And, since the early 2010s, every time I would go to a conference, I would try to go to a talk that was all about AI. And the talks looked pretty much like this, where you have so much vocabulary and things that you have to know about just to get started that it was completely overwhelming. So things like that. Tensors are multidimensional arrays that are used to represent data in AI. They are an alternate way to represent images, videos, and other blah, 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 blah. So AI, of course, is still all about tensors, equations, neural networks, and all of that stuff. And the thing is, what Google has done over the past few years is that they created technologies around AI. So first there was TensorFlow, and then they added some layers on top of that, started supporting multiple different languages. Like TensorFlow was initially only Python, and then they started doing TensorFlow for JavaScript. But they realized that still it was very difficult for people to get into that field just because there's so much vocabulary, so many concepts to just know about in order to get started. So what they did, and that's something that was released this year, what they call MakerSuite is really a website where you can go and you write your prompts. You basically train the AI with your own questions and answers, your own statements, and then you click a button to get some code. So that's a lot easier than anything else we had so far. You can really describe what you want the AI to know, what you want that virtual brain to know about, and then you click a button to get the code out of that, and you can use that code and integrate it in your own application. So when I saw that, I thought, oh, that's interesting, because now that's something I can get into finally and start playing with AI without having to learn a lot of things. So I was very excited when I saw this. And so MakerSuite is that website that I just described. You can, they say, prototype with generative AI, and you can actually do more than just prototype. You can really use the code that you get out of it to have your production application, really. But it's typically perfect for a hackathon if you want to build a small app using AI and not having to worry about the details, and just quickly prototype something, do a proof of concept. This is ideal. This is you can make this happen in very little time. So they have 3 different options to get started. One is text prompt, where it's basically a Q&A, right? You give the AI questions and answers, questions, answers, questions, answers. It kind of builds automatically its knowledge base out of that. The second one, data prompt, is a table. So it's, if you have, table-like data, I don't know, maybe you want to teach the price of products over time, and you have a table of that. So you want to give that to your AI and see what it can do with it. That would be the data prompt option. The last one is the chat prompt. So this is for back and forth chatbot interactions. So they have these 3 things open right now that you can use and start creating from. In my case, I was looking for a way to start using AI. And oh, by the way, so we mentioned MakerSuite. So MakerSuite is that user interface that's going to allow you to create things. And under the hood of MakerSuite, we have what Google calls the PaLM API. And PaLM stands for Pathways Language Model API, which is a very complex way of, it's basically similar to the ChatGPT API in a sense, but it's the Google version of it. And PaLM can do quite a few things already, capable of a wide range of tasks, common sense reasoning, arithmetic reasoning, joke explanation, code generation, translation, all of these things. One of the places where Google is in a very good shape compared to ChatGPT and others is that for a very long time, Google has been doing AI, but they've been doing it in an international fashion, in a sense that all of the language models at Google didn't focus just on English. They know how to work with multiple different languages from all around the world. And that's because one of the lead products that was using those APIs is, of course, Google Assistant, which is available all around the world, and as a result knows about a lot of different languages and accents, and even regional languages or specific accents in specific regions. So in terms of language recognition and really translating words and sentences in any language into something meaningful, Google is very, very good, and not just with English, which is something important to note. So that's a PaLM API. And the thing is, even if this talk uses the PaLM API, we don't write any code in the PaLM API at all, which is really the interesting part. The tool is going to do everything for us. So what kind of tool did I want to create? In my introduction, I mentioned that I'm running a business. And that business is a training business where I teach people how to use Angular and web technologies, but I also sell products. And some of these products are certification exams. Some of these products are video courses. And as a result, when people come to my website, sometimes, very often actually, they are curious about some of these things and they want to ask me questions. So something I did a few years ago is that I added a chat window on the website, and people could use that chat window to ask a question. And the way the chat worked is that if I was online on my phone or my computer, it would tell me, hey, somebody's asking a question. And then I could just take over and answer that question. But most of the time, the people asking questions were actually in Europe or in Asia or in a different time zone, which means that I would wake up in the morning, I would go to my email, and I would have dozens of chat messages to answer. And of course, I would be late by a few hours when I answered those messages. And the thing is, most of these questions were very similar. I had, what is the cost of these things? Or how do I do this? How do I log in? What's in the certification? What's in this course? This and that. So the questions, always the same thing coming over and over again. And I thought, well, it looks like this will be a great task for an AI to solve, because, learning about questions and answers and then building a knowledge base out of that and answering questions, that's typically what a chatbot driven by AI is supposed to do. So my goal was, let's use what I already have, which was a page with a FAQ. My FAQ answered all of these questions. But the thing is, people don't read FAQs anymore, especially if there's a chat window. They just want to use the chat. So I had all of these questions in my FAQ that I just updated based on the questions people asked me. So I thought, okay, if I capture everything people ask about and put it in that FAQ, then they won't ask these questions anymore. Doesn't work. People still wanted to use the chat and ask questions. So I thought, okay, the next step is take this FAQ, use MakerSuite, translate my FAQ into a chatbot, and build that virtual brain that's going to be able to answer questions for me, even when I'm not available. So that was the goal. And even better if I could do this in a way that doesn't take too much time, right? If we can make things happen faster, that's even better. And you guys are working on a hackathon, so time is something that also matters to you. So using those tools can be very helpful. So how did I do it? I took my FAQ, I went to MakerSuite. Interestingly enough, I didn't use the chatbot option of MakerSuite. I just used the first one, the data one, where you can enter a given number of inputs and outputs, up to 500 examples, which is a lot, right? 500 different questions and answers. And it's a lot, especially because in your inputs and outputs, you can be as precise as you want. So you see examples of questions here where my answer is not just one sentence, but multiple different sentences and paragraphs. So you can really go in depth in those answers. And basically, it builds the knowledge base of your AI from that. So even if you're limited to 500 questions and answers, those answers can add additional info and context if needed. So yeah, I took my FAQ page and I just translated one by one, question, answer, entered them in that MakerSuite. And so when you use the tool, and I can go to it right now, so you can see an example from the real thing. So that's the website, that's exactly what it looks like. So these are my examples here. I have only 23 right now listed in here. And So I can add a new one and type the answer right there. And then right away, you can decide to test your prompt. So there's a piece of UI down here where you can add your own question and answer to test the AI, to test what it would answer. So for example, if I type, what's the certification about, which is something people would typically ask in that chat. So what's the certification about? And I can click on that generate response. And now the AI is working on it. So using my 23 examples up here, and is creating that answer. The certification is about Angular, TypeScript, and JavaScript. It even generated 2 different responses. They're identical in that scenario, but I could, you could say generate 5 or generate different variations. So you can see the way that the AI would respond with different flavors of responses, basically. And the nice thing is you can use it to train the AI. So if you like one of the answers, you can say, add this to the prompt examples. So that's another good thing. If the AI gives you a good answer, you can say, oh, okay, that's a good one. Just say that one for later and add it to your brain, in a sense. Add it to your model of questions and answers. So yeah, I can test anything here. Good thing is it's a language processing API. So even if I write in poor English and I make typos or forget or add letters or, what certification to ends about, grammar is not ideal, generate a response, it should be able to do something anyways. Yeah. The certification is about Angular, a TypeScript-based open source front-end web framework. And the second one is certification is about Angular, a framework for building web. So not too bad, right? So even if the question is poorly worded and missing its words and has typos, it's still able to figure things out, which is great. What else can I talk about in this UI? Another nice thing we have here. So the language model used by Google in that example is called Text Python. And I think that's the only one I have available, so I cannot select anything else. There's this temperature setting, which is interesting, because you can increase it, and the higher it is, the more creative the AI is going to be. The thing is, it gets too creative if you increase it, meaning it starts making things up, and it becomes very good at lying. So it would answer anything. Like if I make it temperature of 1 and I ask, can I do this for 3? I'm pretty sure it's going to make things up or say something that's wrong, because it just tries to make you happy somehow. Oh, not too bad. It says, no, it's not 3. And the other variation is giving the prices for them. So yeah, okay, not too bad. But in some cases, it would just go crazy and make up stuff, which of course I didn't want for my chat. I want the chat to be reasonable and just base itself on the Q&A that I have. So I let that temperature down to 0.2. Even 0.3 was too much for me. It would generate crazy variations and invent things that were not true at all. So 0.2 is good. I use that. You can decide how many outputs you get maximum when you test. And that gives you a good way to start playing with it. Another thing I did here, you can give basic instructions before your Q&A. So here what I told the AI is, you are a chat agent helping customers. If you do not know the answer to a question, just answer, please send an email to contact@internet21.com for more info on that topic. And that's because I didn't want the AI to hallucinate and make up stuff. I wanted the answers to remain accurate. So I told the AI, if you don't know the answer, don't try to invent something. Just say, send an email to get more info on that topic. And it works really well. If I ask something completely crazy, it should really answer that. I can try, let's say, it's hard for me to invent questions that are difficult to answer. I'm biased because I always get the same questions and answers. Let's try to find something that would trigger such a response. How hard is the first question of the exam? So that's something I should not be able to answer, basically. I should not know what to do with that, because it doesn't really make sense to ask this anyway. There you go. Please send an email to contact@industry21 for more info on that topic. So you can really tweak the way the chatbot behaves by giving those that extra context. So in my case, it's a chat agent, but if you're creating an AI that's supposed to answer different sort of questions, you can give that extra info and make it respond in a specific manner, which is really good. So that's a website. That's how you fine-tune. That's MakerSuite. That's how you fine-tune your AI, decide how it should behave, configure everything. And then once you're at a point where you're happy with it and you think you can use it and you want to use it outside of that UI and start really code around it, you would click up here on Get Code. And when you click on Get Code, you have different options. So you have curl, you have JavaScript, you have JSON, which is just a JSON config, not that helpful, or you have Python. So JavaScript, Python are the two main ones. The Palm API is a REST API, so you can invoke it using HTTP directly just by making an HTTP request, which is why they use curl as an option here. You could just send a request to that URL and pass the info as a param and get a response. In my case, I wanted to build a web-based chatbot, so I used JavaScript. And I just copy-pasted that code in my own app and started building around that. So yeah, then I exported the code. And the only piece that was missing at this point is I could send a request to my AI and it would give me an answer. But I didn't have any way to show that answer on the web. So I did a quick search for, chat CSS template. And I found that one that I liked. It was, okay, looking good. There was the loading 3 dots indicator when someone is typing and that sort of thing. And it seemed good enough. So I thought, okay, I'm going to download that HTML, CSS, and then I'm going to build my own user interface around it. So just, tweaking the CSS, making it fit to my needs. And more specifically, when we type a question, it would just send that question over HTTP to my AI. So I hosted the code that I got from MakerSuite on a server, and I would send a request to that server to get a response and then display it in my chat. So in the end, my UI looks like this. And it starts with a question, hey, how can I help you? And then people would type, I would like more info on the Angular certification. Sure, here's a link to our certification page. What are the requirements? Take the exam, you need blah, 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 blah. And people can interact, ask questions, and get their answers. So if you want to try it out, there's a URL here. That's the live production one. And what I did to see what people ask that UI is that every time people ask a question, it still sends me a copy by email of both the question and the answer, so that if the UI hallucinates, which it still does from time to time, it still makes up some stuff, which I don't like, but I guess it's one of the main things with AI these days. ChatGPT is known to hallucinate. Google Bar is known to hallucinate. All of these AIs at some point, they just make up stuff and say crazy things. So this one is still a little bit subject to that, especially if people ask questions outside of the scope, but that are completely out of what the chatbot is supposed to be doing. But it does a fairly good job. One thing I like, for instance, I can show you, so I can open it here. And people ask that kind of question sometimes. Are you human? And I would send that question. So you see the chatbot building the answer and responding. And it says, no, I am a chatbot powered by Dialogflow. So you can, and this was not in my prompts, right? It's not in the data that I gave to the chatbot. I only have my 23 or so questions and answers, but it can still answer things outside of that scope with the limited creativity that I allowed it to have. As we talked about, I only have that 0.2, so that 20% allowance for creativity in the answers, just to be safe. But still, sometimes it surprises me and it gets pretty creative, because one of the nice things about those virtual brains is that they can really take all of these questions and answers and make sense out of it. And even if your question is not directly one of the things covered in here, it can really fill in the gaps sometimes and give an answer that makes sense, considering everything I gave in terms of information to it. It's able to make an answer that makes perfect sense and that is correct. So that's really what I find very interesting. The fact that even if you don't cover 100% of the different things that people can ask about, it's going to be able to be smart enough to understand the context and build its own extra knowledge out of that, or kind of guess some of the gaps, fill in the blanks for some of these topics, which I believe is very, very powerful. So yeah, the temperature is how you define how much creativity is allowed in the responses. So if you set it very low, like if I make it 0, then the chatbot would only use the Q&A that I have and nothing else. So if the question is not 100% answered in the output that I give, it would just say, I don't know. When you increase the creativity, it starts trying to be smarter and guess things, like make things up to some extent, right? So the setting I use is 0.2, which seems to be working fine for me. I tried 0.3 for a few weeks, and I found that it was not good. It was making things up. It was hallucinating too much, and it would give false answers to people. So I said, no. Let's be more restrictive and get down to 0.2. But again, that's because in my case, the domain is very, very restrictive. The knowledge base is this, and I don't want the tool to try to make things up. With 0.3, for instance, it would make up some URLs, for instance. People would say, hey, what's the price of that specific course? And it would say, you can find the price at, my website /that course /price, which was not true at all. So it was too creative for me because it was just making things up that didn't make sense in that case. Nice try, but doesn't work. On the other hand, if you are creating a chatbot that's supposed to make up stories, right? If you want to make something that creates science fiction, or invent something completely new, then you want to increase that to 1, basically, because you want the UI to be fully creative and just go crazy in making things up. So yeah, something to test when you play with it, tweak it, and see what works for you. So yeah, I mentioned you can use MakerSuite to create that info. Then you click on Get Code. You get the code out of it. That code is actually super easy to understand, because if you look at it, it's really all of the settings that we have in the buttons. So temperature 0.2, candidate count 2. So that's the number of answers generated for each question. Safety settings. So that I just kept the default here, which is, don't use any harmful language. Don't use violence or sexual words or all of that. It's all removed and not allowed. Basically, that's the idea. And then the main brain, I would say, that the tool is going to use is a string, which is made of inputs and outputs. So once I exported that code, I actually don't use MakerSuite anymore. I exported that code, and now I have my own version of it. I have that TypeScript not user interface backend, where I have my prompt string, which is pretty long now because, of course, over time, as people ask questions, I was able to improve my answers. When the AI was not good enough, I would then provide the right answer and add it to that knowledge base. For instance, people ask me, what is the coupon code for India? That's a question I got very often. So I thought, okay, let's create a specific answer for that, so that now it's going to be very specific and it can answer that question. So I added more and more over time as I got questions from people. And it's just a big string of input-output. So easy to make that brain evolve. Again, I don't need to know about Python, about neural networks or anything. I'm just playing with characters and text. And yeah, this is the code I got. So that's my temperature 0.2 right now. I only want to generate one response in my chat because, of course, I just give one answer back to the user. And the ask a question function uses a Google client that comes with the code that we download, where we say, go ahead, generate the response for the following prompt. And then we get an output. So it's really sending a request, receiving a response, and that's it. So that's the code I use for my server. And the front end that I built with Angular using a template that I found on the web, just have one component, one UI component. HTML is very basic. That's really it. That's my chatbot, where I display a list of messages. The style of the message depends on the type. So if it's a message from me or a message from, well, me, the chatbot, or a question from the user, it's going to be indented to the left or to the right, as we can see here. Yeah, so this is a question, this is an answer. So the style, the CSS apply to move the text to the left or to the right and use different colors. This is based on that type. So is it a chatbot message or a customer message? Setting the text from the response in here. And yeah, this is the loading. So the 3 dots that show up when we ask a question and we wait for the answer. And the button to submit that question. So when people hit enter, we send the question. And sending a question is as easy as making an HTTP request to the backend that I just showed you. And then I display the response. So, in terms of code, once I got the code from the MakerSuite website, I only had to add my own like 60-ish lines of code to the UI, really, because there was no UI provided. MakerSuite is focused on the AI only, so it gives you the ways to talk to the AI and get responses, but it doesn't give you any user interface to do that. So I focused on building my own, mostly for fun. I could have found something pre-made and just reuse it, but I wanted to have my own Angular chatbot because I teach Angular, so it made sense to build that with Angular. Good example for training as well. So yeah, that's why I built my own thing, but I didn't have to. It was just a fun experience to build it that way. So a couple more things, and then we're going to get to the Q&A. If you have any questions, I can give you any answers, or I can try to answer as much as possible. So key takeaways from what we've talked about so far. You can create an AI brain with 0 line of code using MakerSuite and Palm API. This is 100% true. That's what I did. I still don't have any AI coding skills, right? I just use those tools to generate the code for me. Then you can export that code and integrate it in your own stuff. You don't need to know about Python, tensors, equations, any of this. It's all done for you, because under the hood, of course, MakerSuite and the Palm API are written in TensorFlow, and they use Python and all of that stuff, but we don't need to know about it, which is the best part, because it makes it a lot easier to get started and start and really start building something with AI. So that's everything I wanted to mention before the Q&A. And I see we already have a few questions in the chat, but if you have any other questions, feel free to add them and ask about anything, and I'll do my best to answer all these questions.
Thank you so much, Alain. I think it was a very, very informative workshop, and there were some few questions, but I noticed that you were answering them along the way.
Yeah, I took up just one of them so far.
Okay. So I can show you the questions. I think I have a question. Is MakerSuite free to use?
Yeah. So in the current state of things, MakerSuite is free to use because all it does, it's kind of like an IDE in a sense. It's a way to generate the code. So the tool is free to use. The chat I showed you so far, I never paid anything for it. So even the way I use the Palm API, there's not enough usage to generate the billing. So everything you've seen here, I haven't paid anything to make it happen, which is good to know, right? And perfect for a hackathon.
Yes, I think many of us would agree to that. There are 2 more questions that we have. Are there more use cases for MakerSuite apart from chatbots?
Yes. So they do have different options, data prompts and chat prompts. The chatbot is, a Q&A kind of chatbot, so it's similar. The data one that I haven't used, let's see. Yeah, this one. Oh, it's different from what I saw last time. Text prompt. Oh, text prompt. So yeah, you can, they have some examples here, like summarize a paragraph, casual ponderings, poem writer. They even have a gallery to get you inspired of different examples of things you can do with it. So writing an email for you based on a given topic, rewrite some text to improve grammar, extract names of places from a paragraph. So you can really use it to do all sorts of things. Very much like ChatGPT. You can ask ChatGPT to do all sorts of stuff, explain something, or parse some texts and rewrite it. That's very much the same here. The only difference is that what you get out of it is code that you can use in your own apps. So you can really integrate the results and build around it.
Great. Thank you so much. And I think we have one more question. What's your favorite part of the MakerSuite API?
So the favorite part is that I was finally able to get into building something with AI without having to know about Python. And not having to know about all of the libraries and all of the concepts, right? So that's really the nice thing. It's a high-level user interface that helps you design things, and then you get the code. That's very extremely valuable to get started. And then if you need something more complex, of course, you can get into code and try to improve and add to it. But it's a no-code solution to get started with AI, and that's the best part of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Alain. Thank you so much for hosting this workshop and teaching us so much about MakerSuite and the Farm API. We're really grateful that you could make up some time and come and be a part of Sachacks. But thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and enjoy the rest of the hackathon.
Thank you. Thank you.